Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 30th May 2026. And here we are to present to you this recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session as we make our progress through our journey of chapter 13. Along with me, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
As I bring up the screen, we'll take a look at the cover slide and allusions to the content we covered today. So we got through chapter 13, verses 21 and 22 after the usual recap quiz, which was for the content from the prior session on chapter 13, verses 19 and 20. As always, if you take a look at the description for this video, you'll get access to the link to the community portal where you have free access to all these slides and much more for your learning purposes. Of course, the playlist for the recap videos and so on as well. So let's take a look at chapter 13, verse 21.
कार्य कारण कर्तृत्वे हेतुः प्रकृतिरुच्यते पुरुष सुख दुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतुरुच्यते.
Chapter 13, verse 21 has the catchphrase with alliteration and as a question, rolling responsibilities. As we all saw in the session, in fact, maybe I'll start off with the flyer right away. Remember, the question was, as you roll along the paths of life, where does responsibility lie? We saw the answer, of course, in the session. We'll talk about it. But here, if you see, there is the horizontal axis, lots of happiness. There is the vertical axis, lots of distress. Whatever the paths are, paths of happiness, paths of distress, pleasure or pain, we roll along them. We get confused. We talked about that. We'll see that later as well. The soul versus the body. But as we roll along, the soul that rhymes with soul is the one that has that responsibility for experiencing happiness and distress. So that's why you have the soul periodically scattered here amongst all these different elements or expressions, experiences of happiness or distress, as a reminder to us also that at the crux of everything, if you see the origin, the center, the core of the image, that is also a soul. Seems to be a little more intellectual, perhaps, because here we're trying to stress that the soul has that understanding that, yes, distinct from the body, distinct from Prakriti in terms of creation, and has to be the one responsible for experiencing happiness and distress. So, again, the question as the catchphrase, rolling responsibilities. As we saw in the commentary, then again, two types of responsibilities. For creation, for cause and effect, it is Prakriti, it is the material energy, it is Maya. And of course, for happiness, distress experiences, it is the individual soul. Swamiji reminds us the Vedas talk about the 8.4 million species of creation. Remember, we mentioned that 400,000 of those are human forms, so just about 5%. Again, stressing the importance of how blessed we are to have the human form. All the transformations take place by the material energy. In contrast, we do not get to blame our external circumstances for happiness or distress. We get confused, of course, we're deluded, so we think we're the body, it's the senses, the mind that experience those elements of pleasure and pain. So we learned this English word as well, if you remember, revisit it or add it to your dictionaries, vicariously or vicariously. We've often said that we as students of the Bhagavad Gita get to learn all this wisdom vicariously through Arjun as the recipient of that, from Sri Krishna. Here, the example given is the soul is vicariously identifying through the mind, it's getting all those pleasurable sensations. But then Swamiji quotes from the Ramayana. Mummy had talked about it in the session. It's almost like, the misery in a dream state. Unless we stop that dreaming, we chop off from that dream, we will not get dissociated from that element of pain, which again is a sensation. It's not the reality, but it's that illusion there. So again, it is the soul that is declared responsible, Sri Krishna says, for experiencing happiness and distress. Next up, we'll take you to chapter 13, verse 22.
पुरुषः प्रकृतिस्थो हि भुङ्क्ते प्रकृतिजान् गुणान् कारणं गुणसङ्गोऽस्य सद् असद्योनिजन्मसु.
Chapter 13, verse 22, also with alliteration, the catchphrase here is ways to wombs. Because Sri Krishna here talks about the different paths potentially that lead us to different kinds of wombs. So, in fact, continuing from the prior verse, we now have again Purush, the individual soul, Prakriti, the material energy. As the Purush, the soul, is embedded or seated in that material energy, there is then the confusion of the distinction between the soul and the body. As we identify with the body, and that's coming from pride, from the ego, we think about kartrutva bhiman, that pride of doership. And so we then get attached to the world. But how that happens is because we're getting attached to the three gunas. The three gunas, again, remember, components of Prakriti, of material energy, and they vary in proportions in each of us and throughout periods of time. So there might be elements of goodness, sattva. There is passion, desire to work, achieve fame, that is rajas, and then ignorance, sloth, that is tamas. We go through all various combinations and proportions of them, and that is causing more and more attachment, of course, and being embedded in the material energy in the world. Again, we have failed to recognize we are the soul. We think we are the body. The body experiences all these wonderful pleasures through the senses, the mind, the intellect. And then eventually, as Sri Krishna says, the cause of birth is because of this, and that is birth in superior and inferior wombs, lifetime after lifetime, based on our karmas, based on our actions, and how God grants us the quote unquote fruits of all those actions, leads to birth in the next lifetime in a womb, which could be from one of those 8.4 million species. Of course, the hope is we transcend all that and we take birth in God's abode. And that is then where we are beyond this entire cycle of birth and death. Swamiji gives the example here of a bus having an accident. The bus itself has components, the wheels, the steering wheel, of course, the tires, etc., all that. But it is the driver who gets blamed if there is an accident. Likewise, the soul is the one, even though, right, we identify as, the body, but we also then get confused as if we are the doer and the enjoyer of everything. Therefore, again, when it comes to happiness, yeah, we're very excited. But likewise, if it comes to pain or distress, again, we are the ones as that soul who are responsible for those sensations. We get the blame there as well. Mommy, I'll pass it over to you to explain more about these two verses and also talk about the Sanskrit dictionary.
So let's start understanding by the important words. In verse number 21, Purushaha. Purushaha means the individual soul. And another important word is Bhoktritve. Bhoktritve means in experiencing, when we experience certain things in life. And in verse number 22, we'll look at the word Prakritisthaha. Prakritisthaha means when we are seated in the material energy, what happens? Gunasangaha. Gunasangaha means we get attached to the three gunas. So basically, what is happening in these two verses? Krishna, because this chapter is about Kshetra and Kshetragnya, the body and the field of activity. That is what we are learning. So, what is it? Purusha is the individual soul. Krishna has explained that if you all remember in chapter 7, verses 4 and 5, we learned Sri Krishna had explained about his two energies. That is Prakriti. One is Prakriti, that is material energy, which is made out of earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intellect, and ego. So that is God's inferior energy. And in verse number 5, Krishna talked about his superior energy, that is called soul energy, which is Jiva Shakti. Okay. Jiva Shakti means all the embodied souls. Okay. And soul is a part of God's spiritual energy. God is one supreme energetic, and everything that exists, both spiritual and material. Spiritual is higher energy, material is lower energy. It is like the sunlight pervades the entire solar system. Similarly, it is God, He pervades the whole universe by His infinite powers. So now there is this matter, Prakriti, which is perishable, and there is Purusha, individual soul, which is imperishable. So the thing is, we have to understand this, that when there is the time of creation, it is material energy which has the cause and effect, and different things are made, different species are formed. Okay. But when we are experiencing or feeling happiness or distress in our lives, then what is it? Then it is our individual soul which is declared responsible. But usually, what happens, we don't understand this because we are just connecting ourselves with the material energy. We see this world, and because of the gunas, we are attached to the gunas. So we start feeling, when things we like, we start feeling happy. When things we don't like, we start feeling sad. That is what is happening. So all we have to remind ourselves that we are not the body, we are the soul. Body is perishable, that material energy will go back to this earth only one day. Okay. It is only the soul which continues. So whatever things we do, or whatever work we do, or whatever karma we do, okay, then our soul is the one which is getting either the blame or the praise for it. So then that is how it gets, what is it? It gets bound in the cycle of death and birth. So this is what is happening. We have to understand that this body, this is actually body and sansar, this is all going through transformations all the time. Okay. And this is perishable, whereas individual soul, it always stays like that. It is Sat Chit Anand Swarup. Okay. So we have to understand that um, ego is playing a big role. Ego, because of the ego, we think that we are the doers and we are the enjoyers, but it is not like that. Huh? We have to understand that we are not the doers, we are not the karta, and we are not the bhokta, not the enjoyer. Whatever energy we have, it is given to us by the God's superior energy. Huh? And because of that energetics energy, we do something. So we are not the doers. Once we understand that, then we'll be able to come out of this cycle of birth and death. Then the soul will not have to take the blame. It will not accumulate the karmas. Only when we have understood the ego and we kill our ego. Once we understand that it is God who is giving us energy and it is God who is the enjoyer of everything, then we will not be blamed, because otherwise, what happens when we are attached to these gunas and we start feeling sukh and dukh, we start feeling, because of attachment to gunas, we start feeling pleasure and distress, whereas we have seen that saints are way above all this situation, because they are at all times aware of that they are only the soul, they are not the body. So same way, if we start understanding this knowledge, we will be able to get out of this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, this stockpile of karmas from innumerable past lives, it will cause us to get repeated birth in superior and inferior wombs. Okay, we understand, we have learned that this human form is the only form in which we can accumulate good karmas, and we can attach our mind to God and get out of this cycle of birth and death, provided we understand that we are not the doers and we are not the enjoyers. Over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mummy. And by any chance, did you want to sing? There's the
Yeah,
line.
yeah. So Swamiji has given the example from Ramayan, whereby it explains that the world is sustained by God, but it is like an illusion. We are not understanding. We just get attracted by this unreal world, and then our soul gets the misery. And it is like in dream, when we are being troubled by any problem, we feel. But when we open our eyes, we understand that that was just a dream. So, same way, we have to open our eyes and understand that we are the soul, we are not the body. So, the verse goes like this: एहि विधि जग हरि आश्रित रहे, जदपि असत्य देत दुख अहे, ज्यों सपने सिर काटे कोई, बिनु जागे न दूरी दुख होई, बिनु जागे न दूरी दुख होई. Unless we wake up, that dukh will not go away. Similarly, we have to wake up in our real lives and understand that we are the soul. If you all remember, in previous verses, somewhere we had done the concept of Rath Kalpana, where the chariot is just running and running based on the other senses. Okay, the soul is sleeping, soul is not understanding where the chariot is going, so soul is going to be blamed. But when the soul awakens, how it awakens? When it gets the right intellect, the right knowledge from the intellect, the soul awakens, it understands that yes, it is the one which is going to get the blame. So, one, it is awakened, then it is very careful, and then it drives the chariot thinking that soul is not the doer and not the enjoyer. It is the God who is the doer and enjoyer. Then automatically we can get rid of the cycle of death and birth and get a privileged birth in this human form, through which we can connect to God more easily. Over to you, Gagan.
Thank you, Mommy. Yep, an excellent connection there to the Rath Kalpana or the parable of the chariot that we had covered way towards the end, I think, of chapter 3. We'll post that in the slides as well as a video that everyone can benefit from. And I like how you also connected it in terms of the wakeful sense. So there's the Ramayan verses that Swamiji has provided, and then us as well, the passenger, the soul, the on the chariot, who is asleep, who needs to wake up. So plenty to think about. Maybe you can consider that as some homework as well, everyone. So in the comments to the video, you're welcome to add your thoughts on what else you remember or recognize from that Rath Kalpana, the parable of the chariot. How is it similar, or potentially how is it different also to the bus example that Swamiji gives in the commentary to chapter 13, verse 22, I think. Also, superior and inferior wombs, your understanding of it, your examples, feel free to give them as comments as well. And with this, we keep on continuing our full journey as we all are as awake as possible. And we inch along for chapter 13. Next time we meet, it is a new month, so it'll be Saturday, 6th June 2026, same 8 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 p.m. India time. Till then, thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.